the South African Constitutional Court has 11 chairs for the 11 judges who uphold the highest law in the land. So to remind us that the Constitution was written by and for the people, Constitution Hill has put out a call for the design of a 12th chair, if you like, or a people's chair, which will be displayed at the court. Now, the call is for a chair that reinvents the aesthetics of power in which all people will feel comfortable and represented. For more on this initiative, let's bring in the CEO of Constitutional Hill Trust. That's Vanessa September, who joins us now via our video link. And Vanessa, it's great to see you. Thanks very much indeed for making time for us here on Newzroom Afrika. So you say the initiative is about reimagining the aesthetic of power. It sounds poetic, but what do you mean?
Well, the Constitutional Court itself was a reimagining of an aesthetic power. It was done through the building was acquired, the design was acquired through a process of a competition, international competition. South Africans won. And it's based on the principle, the design is based on the principle of justice under a tree, not this very Greek and classic buildings where you walk up the big steps until you eventually reach the Corinthian columns and, you know, you feel awed and intimidated by the building. Our Constitutional Court is very accessible. You can walk in, you can listen at any time, just like you can when justice is administered under a tree in the African setting. So this is the issue of transforming the language of power into a language that is more accessible, that speaks to the language of our democratic constitutional country that we fought so hard for and have achieved.
Absolutely.
So when we speak about the aesthetics of power, we're asking the question of how does a chair, if the judges are the custodians of the Constitution, and as you said, the Constitution was collectively made by the people through struggle and subsequently through the Constitutional Assembly process, where do the people have their voices be heard? Not every 5 years only, but when else, right? And as you know, the Constitutional Court yesterday just issued a judgment on the issue of the election. So question is whether it happens now or later. So we don't want people to only have their voices be heard during the marking of a cross, but every other time of the year. So this idea of locating a 12th chair on the precinct is not to display it, but to use it as a platform, like a soapbox, if you like. So when you have something poignant to say, that you can occupy that space and make your pronouncements and be heard, and to capture it and to video it and to send it out on social media, and the team locally will capture it. So that's the intention, is to see how we can think and dream and speak about the stories and values of the Constitution to inform our daily living and inform, helping towards realizing the constitutional values. And the 12th chair is one of the symbols that we would like to use to bring people to feel they own the Constitution. It's their Constitution protecting their rights. We are also the custodians of these values, and we should espouse the values, we should live the values, and hopefully things that happen to, things like that which happened to the young Miss Mthembeni wouldn't happen in our society. I mean, how very tragic is that?
Right.
So it is the values that we want to espouse. So whilst it's a story about the design of a chair, it's also the idea is to initiate and encourage conversations between parents and community and teachers and learners about the values of the Constitution, and driving people's attention to this incredible document that helps to underpin the morals of our society.
Let's unpack this initiative a bit more before we speak, perhaps even in philosophical terms, about the Constitutional Court as an institution. So you're essentially asking the public to design a chair. Are we expecting, quite literally, a physical chair to go up at the buildings of the Constitution that can physically be occupied by essentially anyone?
Correct. So the competition is open to everyone. You don't have to be a designer. We will work with the shortlist with the team from FADA, students at the Architecture and Design School, Art School, to help to create the technical aspects of it and to create a maquette and so on that one can use to have the voting be done. But the idea is that ultimately, yes, the winner will be announced. The winner will be paired with the manufacturer who can also help to realize the chair in the most magnificent way. And then, yes, the chair will be located physically on Constitution Hill. We're in discussion down the line about whether we make more chairs, one for each province, or, that's a question for later. But there will be a physical chair that will be unveiled in March next year at the Human Rights Festival that happens 21st of March, around Human Rights Day.
Absolutely interesting. I'm all for symbolism, so I can't wait to see how that turns out. But many people might not even know why there are 11 chairs and 11 judges specifically in the Constitutional Court. And it's interesting because we're in a context now where it almost feels like what happens in the Constitutional Court features a whole lot more prominently in public discourse than it has in our recent history. So let's start there. There's a deliberate reason why there aren't not only 11 Constitutional Court judges, but why that's actually an odd number and not an even one.
Yes, good question and good point. They're uneven number because if it has to come down to a vote, in all instances you have a jury or a group of people. If there's an odd number, then you will have an uneven outcome, and then the majority number would be the winner. As I remember it, and as I know it, the Constitutional Court prefers to work in a collegial way and prefers to work with consensus rather than to have a vote. Sometimes the court does issue judgments where the majority of the court wrote one judgment and there's a dissenting judgment or a supporting judgment that a different judge, one of the 11 judges, write. So that's also possible. But the number of 11 would be, I don't know exactly. That's the question. Yeah. Would you go and research that? And so we want to drive people's attention to why 11, where would you find out why 11 people, why 11 judges were chosen, and what's the story behind that? And so part of the work we have done on Constitution Hill is to create an online exhibition that tells the story of the making of the Constitution and the Constitutional Court. And in this exhibition, which is online, and I can give you the link to it, you can learn more about how these decisions were made at CADESA during the process of negotiations, how the judges are appointed, who appoints them. Is it the president who decides, or is there a Judicial Services Commission that makes that decision? And so how do people reach that pinnacle of seats in our judiciary? So whilst we are asking people to design a chair, we really are encouraging people to engage with the Constitution, with the process of the making of the Constitution, with its values, what it means for society, what the rights are, what we can draw on, and just to feel more connected with it, and to know what the preamble says. And to, the opening lines of the Constitution starts with "We the people," not "in humble submission to God," which was the previous constitution under the apartheid days. So, and then there's a big story around how the words "we the people" became the first words of the Constitution. So there's a story about the unpacking of the making of the preamble line by line, with each word that was contentious. It's highlighted, and you can click on it, and you can see who said what, in what meeting, around what time during the CADESA negotiations, and how the preamble came to be the document that it is.
Fascinating. I've come across commentary over the past couple of days, quite frankly, about how it feels like a whole lot of the work of our government, the three spheres of our government, is now on the hands of specifically the judiciary and more pertinently, the Constitutional Court. In other words, let me rephrase that. We are leaving too much of the work to the Constitutional Court when it comes to trying to revive or sharpen the rigor of our democracy. Do you also get that sense that just too much of the arbitration is landing up in that court, and it actually takes away from the other work that the court could be doing?
Well, since I'm not a lawyer, I don't really want to speak to that. I would much rather that you ask that of one of my colleagues, somebody like Justice Albie Sachs, who serves on our board, or Luanda Tfaso, who is a human rights lawyer who works in our team. But I do think that if the department, as an individual, if the different spheres of government are not able to exercise their powers correctly, it is unfortunate that a lot of things then end up being in the Constitutional Court. One would imagine that they wouldn't want to waste all the resources to be fighting issues that end up in the Constitutional Court, where the judges have to make these decisions. It would be much better if things can actually be resolved in Parliament, which is where our people's representation sits here.
Yeah, I mean, just even to do with these elections, we were told that it is actually Parliament that's best poised to try and find a way around how we should hold these elections, and not the Constitutional Court itself. That being said, there's also a difference, right, between constitutionalism and the Constitution itself. How do you reckon we're faring with the former?
That's a big question to ask. Constitutionalism, in my mind, speaks to the values and to the way our democracy is functioning. The Constitution is the document, the list of the laws that govern our society. How we execute and speak to those laws and live to those laws, that's the nature of our constitutional democracy. And that's where I think constitutionalism as a noun or as a verb sits. You can decide. So I do think that there's so much in our country that is positive, that is different to what we had before during the days of apartheid. And we mustn't forget it's only 25 years. This December would mark the 25th anniversary since Madiba signed the Constitution into law. So in terms of being a constitutional democracy, we're still a baby, but a lot has happened in this time. There are more people who can move freely. My son, who's in grade 9, is just busy writing an essay about apartheid laws, and he interviewed his dad about the 90-day law. He was arrested twice under that law, and what these laws mean for society or meant for society and how people responded and reacted to it. Unfortunately, now our Constitution speaks to the fact that 90-day or detention without trial is no longer permitted. So we can speak about all the other landmark cases that happened since the Constitution came into being, that gives freedom to people who to love whom they want, to marry whom they want, to live where they like, to go to school where they want. The powers of the president is curtailed. Even if the president was Mandela, it was said that he can't make decisions unilaterally. It has to go to parliament, to the point you made earlier. About housing, about rights, about ventilated, improved toilets. I mean, who speaks in the Constitutional Court at that level? But the Constitution here deals with socio-economic rights. It's the first constitution in the world that covers socio-economic rights. Issues about health, HIV, where government should roll out HIV administration sites of medication, and mothers. And I mean, there's just so many. I can go on and on all day about not being a lawyer. I might twist my tongue a little bit, but I think that there's so much that we have achieved in the last 25 years, and so many rights and freedoms, and yet we still have a lot of pain in the country. We acknowledge that. And so the question is, what do we do in the next 25 years? How do we as citizens also have our voices be heard stronger in order to make the Constitution a lived reality in more ways than it is at the moment? And that's what the 12th chair aims to be, a platform from which one can speak to that point.
Fascinating discussion. Vanessa September, thanks very much indeed for your time. And I hope it all works out, if not for anything, for the symbolism at the very least. Vanessa September is the CEO of the Constitution Hill Trust. Once again, thanks very much indeed.